Hey, can you hear me?
Yes. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. Can you send me the link for Node.js? I'm still to install it, so I'll just do that now.
Sure.
How are you? How's your day been?
I'm doing well. Also, can you pronounce your name again? I think
It's Kaustubh.
costume.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Okay. Okay. I'll try to remember that. I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can
Okay.
call me Cash as well. That's fine because my friends call me that. So
Gotcha.
yeah,
Costume. Okay. I think I
yeah.
got it. Cool. But your friends call you Cash or
Oh yeah,
Cost?
because they call me Cash because it rolls off easily, and I play soccer with them, so it's easier to call for the ball and stuff.
Got it. Okay. Cool. 100%. I sent the link in the
Oh yeah, I
chat.
got it. I'm installing it right now.
Do you have a Windows computer or?
A Windows computer, yeah.
Gotcha. Do you have the Windows subsystem Linux?
Yes, I think I do. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, I mean, I'm not sure. I used to be a Windows user, but that was a long time ago. So I didn't know how
All
you
right.
will run. You will need to open the terminal and run Node with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
For the time being, I'm supposed to just install the.
Yeah.
Inst- yeah,
Just
okay.
install it and then see if you can open up a terminal and type node space hyphen hyphen version to see if it tells you what version of Node you have installed.
Okay, got it.
Mhm. Let's give it 5 minutes for folks to trickle in,
Uh,
and then we'll get started.
Sounds good.
Hey, Rook. Hey, Rook. Can you hear me? It looks like Rook has some issues. Can you guys see my screen? Cool. Awesome. Thank you for the confirmation, both. All right. 1 more minute, and then we'll jump in. Hey, you guys,
Yeah, how you doing?
Doing good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm ready for this second session.
Awesome. Cool. Um, wait, so you guys have had some, I think last time we talked, um, you guys mentioned, I guess that was last time. um, you all mentioned you had some exposure to the Java programming language, right? Okay.
Right? Yeah. I have experience with JavaScript.
Okay. Cool. What about so Jepson has experience with JavaScript, Rook and Cache. You guys had experience with Java. I think I remember maybe Cache talking about Java and Rook also in the in the university. But okay, so you guys already know what a function is, what variables are, what data types, different data types. Okay. Thanks for the confirmation.
Yeah, and yeah, with Java, I've had most experience. Not so much with
Yeah,
JavaScript.
that's cool. How about you, Rook? Yes. Okay. Cool. Okay. Cool. Yeah, I think I still, weirdly enough, I still get um, recruiters on LinkedIn offering or like confusing Java with JavaScript. Yeah, they're quite different. But in the same sense, you probably have already seen this. Like all programming languages have more things in common than not. Cool. So, are we ready to get started?
No, later on, because right now, I don't know if you have the time later on to help me with the um connecting the database thing we elephant we're doing. You know, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if you have time later on. Can you help me with that?
We'll see. I think it's likely that we might finish a bit earlier today because you guys already know what variable is and a function is, so we will be able to move faster today. So I think if we have some time after, yeah, we can look into it. But do you have the database URL?
Yeah, I created it in elephant. I
Yeah,
created the database. I created the instance, so I'm sure it's there.
right. But do you have the URL? Were you able to find the URL for the
Oh,
database?
yeah, I was able to.
Okay, cool. So I think you will be able to follow along today because what we basically the only thing we needed from yesterday is just the database URL and remembering the SQL commands, which you all seem to have mastered or already had experience with. So that's it.
No problem.
Cool. So make sure to like go find your database URL or because we'll use it. We'll use it here today again. Cool. All right, so let's get started. As I said, I think this one is going to be, we'll be able to move quicker. We will see how it goes. But, well, thank you for being here. This is session 2 of the Backend Development Bootcamp with Node, JavaScript, and Postgres. Today, we will look into how do we query that Postgres database using JavaScript, and we will be using a PostgreSQL interface called PG Promise, which is a package we install to talk to the database. But briefly, so in the previous session, we talked about databases and we use Beekeeper Studio to talk to our database, right? Create tables, add some data, and modify it. Today, we'll learn how to CRUD that data using JavaScript code in Node. So CRUD, again, create, read, update, delete. It's something that I found funny or interesting to make when I was making this graph is that they both use a hexagon for their logos, both Beekeeper and JavaScript. Sorry, this is This is the Node logo. And one sort of line that I wanted to draw is one thing that I wanted to draw your attention to is that these two, Beekeeper and Node with PG Promise, are database clients, which means that in a client-server relationship, they play the client side, which are accessing, as we talked about yesterday, accessing resources from another computer, basically. But Beekeeper Studio is basically for users, maybe database administrators, and Node.js with PG Promise we use for applications, for building backends, applications in general. And as I had said in our last session, you can virtually create a backend in any programming language. There are, in those programming languages, you will also find something like PG Promise, which is the bridge between that language world with SQL and Postgres world. That is going to be a Postgres database interface. So I didn't know of any language that will have that sort of built-in. Maybe PHP, but I actually don't. I'm not too familiar. That will have it like sort of built in into the language to communicate with a Postgres or a SQL database. You will need sort of sometimes called a driver or for sure an interface to connect to the database. Cool. So the first step is getting VS Code. I think from last night, you all told me you have VS Code running. Give me one more confirmation on that.
Yeah, I have VS Code.
Okay. Then Rick just install it. Cash got it. Also, just to get a sense, Cash is running Windows. Rick Jepson, what are you running? What's your machines? Windows. Okay. And Windows.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. We got all Windows users. Do you guys know? Well, I guess we'll find out. So you have VS Code. Next step is to install Node. I think Cash told me he got Node installed. I'm going to share the link here. But basically, just download the installer for Windows. Oh, actually, so that's interesting because we'll see if this works. We'll see if this works because I'm not too familiar with how the terminal environment works in Windows, but we'll run an experiment. So give me a confirmation once you have Node installed, and then basically once you have Node installed, try to open a terminal window and type node ---- version, and it should tell you what version of Node you have. This is, in my case, 12.18. Okay, cool. So you both have it. Okay, so then let's wait up one moment for you, Jepson.
I have Node installed.
Cool. And okay, so let's try then with that. Let's give a quick JavaScript crash course. Let me see it now. Cool. So, just like all programming languages, there is a way to declare variables, and there are different data types. In our case, we have 2 ways of creating variables. We actually have 3, but now in ES6, which is the latest version of JavaScript, the 2 preferred ways to create variables are with the const keyword and the let keyword. And then you just follow that by a by a name, like open, message, age, fruits, etc. There are some constraints on the names. Oftentimes in JavaScript we use something called count case, which is if the word has multiple, if the name of the variable has multiple words, like let's say my computer, my will be lowercase, then computer will be capital C, and then everything else lowercase. That's more of like not a standard, a convention the developer community in JavaScript has adopted, and I'm sure I know, for example, Python uses something called sort of snake case, which is joining multiple words with an underscore, and so on. Some restrictions are on the names are you cannot use a number at the beginning. You could use a number in the middle or after. You can use you cannot use a period. You can use the $sign, however. Yeah, and I'm not going to go into all the restrictions on the names because they're not that important for what we're doing here. But const variables never change. It's also all kind of a convention to, if they're never going to change. Actually, no, never mind. Const variables are never going to change, and if they're global variables, we do them capitalize their full name. For booleans, strings, for quotation marks, they mark a string. I think what we have is double quotes, single quotes, and we also have backticks, which also act as quotation marks. That might be different from some other languages, and we'll actually look at those because they're kind of handy. Variables, and then we have, this is an array and a list that actually has methods for us to add elements to it and remove elements from it. We could do like fruits that push pear. Well, pear is already there. Oh, strawberry. We will add strawberry to the end of our array. Yeah, that's pretty much on that. One of the most useful values in JavaScript are objects, and most programming languages, you probably already know, have their equivalents, which basically objects are a collection of key value pairs or key value properties that are efficient and easy to read, and they use to model real-world objects in a computer system. And in our application, we could represent a user using this following collection of key value pairs, which we could declare a variable called user, and then we do equal curly brackets. Curly brackets is what marks sort of this as an object, and then we have keys on the left, name, team, retire, age, and then values on the right, separated by a colon, as opposed to an equal sign. I know, so this we'll call an object literal. This is how we can define an object. We could also define an empty object and then add the properties later. Some of you may be like used to creating objects with constructors, or calling like, let's say, let user equal new user or new person. That we can still do that in JavaScript. JavaScript has classes. We can still do that, but it's actually kind of rare in the JavaScript ecosystem to say declare a variable and call a constructor on it. Most of the time, we use sort of literal objects as a general tool. And actually, I'm curious about, like, on Java or any other programming languages you have touched on, what are these called on your respective programming language? Basically, a collection of key value pairs. Dictionaries, that's a good name. I think Python is the one that calls them like that the most, or something I have seen. Maps in Java. Cool. And Rook also said map. Cool. Yeah. Yeah. And I guess one thing with objects in JavaScript, I think as maps, or actually, I think they behave pretty closely to dictionaries in Python. But we don't have to. They do have methods built in that we could call, even though they're sort of not defined here. But they're usually to add something to the object, or to retrieve. We generally just key into it. Like, for example, here we wanted to access Michael Jordan's age, we could just say user.age, and that's already keying into that property, and we'll print out console log. So let's actually try then this. Fire up VS Code. We're actually let's create a folder in VS Code. Let's create that folder and let's call it Backend Development or Backend Bootcamp. Let me know once you have the folder. And in that folder, we're going to create a file called user.js. So create an empty folder called Backend Bootcamp, and then create a file within that folder called user.js. Then type in this object, and let's console log. So console log is the sort of the print statement of JavaScript to log something to the console. So let's try that.
Did you say user.js as a file or a folder?
So the folder should be called Backend Bootcamp, and user.js should be the file inside. Mm-hmm. Okay, so it looks like Rook got it working. Okay, and then let's wait for Cache a little bit. So you guys run it? You guys ran the program using Node? Rook and Jepson? Okay, cool. Yes, that's exactly what we need to do. Cool. So as you guys are done, here's another exercise. Try in a new line, or try console logging just the entire user instead of user.age, just user. Yeah, log the entire. Yeah, so we wanna see the entire object. So we wanna see the entire object. So basically, we want. Actually, I guess I should also create a folder with you guys. Let's see. Should permanently. Let me permanently change the font size. Cool. Okay, great. Awesome to see collaboration in the chat going on. So let me create my folder. So backend. Backend Bootcamp. Then here I'm going to create a file. And I can open. Oh, so I don't think you guys could do this. I'm not sure. I'm going to open the code command with periods, which is going to open VS Code for me. Let me have VS Code here. I'm going to close my terminal here. I'm going to use. Okay, so you guys were able to. Let's see. Jepson, I don't understand your question.
Nah, the code and the dot to open this code. I don't know. It works since it works, but I don't know why. It just works.
Oh, okay. When you type in the terminal code period. Yeah.
Yeah, and it opens up VS Code. And I don't know if there was a way to if it comes with just when you download it. I don't know.
Yeah, that's when you download VS Code. When you download the VS Code will install. Sometimes it does it automatically, sometimes it doesn't. It will install the code command, which is, let's see, the code command is sort of attached to VS Code. So when you run code period, you're saying, when you do code period, you're saying open the current folder. Period means the current folder with VS Code. Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
Nope. And then it looks like it can even tell me the version. Well, let's double check this. Yeah, 1.54. Cool. It even tells the commit, that we're on. Okay. So you all have VS Code. I'm gonna copy this. So when you do console.log user age. So I will recommend you. Let's actually press this. Open the VS Code terminal by clicking on terminal while in the menu at the top, new terminal, and then this should pop up here. And then here, try to run the code with Node user.js. Let me know if this works for you. Okay. Cool. Okay, looks for 2 of you. Jefferson, let me know once you have it.
Yeah, that works.
That works. Cool. So wait, what happens if you in the terminal you type echo capital SSA shell? You guys get? So we'll not put nothing. It creates an empty line. Okay. You guys, you sure that you put the $ and shell capital?
Shell, so I don't know.
But so you probably forgot the $ in front.
Nah, I'll put it there.
And it doesn't give you a line like this?
No, it doesn't.
Okay. Give me 1 sec. No. Oh, wait, hold on. Give me 1 sec. I just gotta check a message real quick. Okay. Okay, so it looks like then, so if you guys don't get anything when you say equal shell, yeah, so then you guys are going on the native prompt, which I don't think that will be an issue then. Cool. So you guys don't have, so it turns out that you can now run Linux within Windows with something called the Windows Subsystem Linux or WSL. Let's see. Yeah. And this is what I had a few students that had Windows computers, and this is what we recommended them to install, just because it gives us a more uniform platform. For example, to run Postgres, we will to run Postgres locally, which we're not doing in this case. We will install it through the Windows Subsystem Linux. But I don't think we're going to need this. Yeah. Okay, cool. So yeah, so for our objects, we can simply pass them to other functions. In this case, we're passing it to the log function. And as I run this again, users.js, now we see in output being printed, basically everything exactly the same. So we can almost like literally print anything in JavaScript at least. You can print anything, and then something will come up in the console. Cool. Okay. So object facts. You can change properties. They can mutate, and then we can bring back MJ if we from retirement if we change it like so. So if we want to change, if we want to modify a property of the user, we just need to say user that the name of the property retired equal to true, and that's it. We just reassign that property. As I run the program again, now we see that retired. Oh, sorry, I put it same false. We see that then it changes to false. So change one of the other properties from Michael Jordan. Maybe increase the age or change the name to another player. Honestly, they thought about the PowerShell. I haven't used it either, so I can't provide more context. So change some other property from this user, then print it, see what you get. Cool. We could also, so to change properties inside a simple assignment, we could also, to create new properties inside, we just need to name them. User that championships. Championships equal 6. This property doesn't exist, but the assignment operator will create it then within. If we run our code again, now we see that our object has one more property, championships equal to 6. So objects in JavaScript are what are known as like first-class citizens. They are very flexible, can have a, I actually don't know the number of keys, if there is a limit on how many there could be, but they're used everywhere. Mostly, yeah, object, that makes JavaScript a good language for object-oriented programming as well. Cool. To delete a property, we have a special keyword. So if we wanted to delete the name of the team, we have delete. And then we just say user.team. And as I run this again, see now that we no longer have a team for that object. And this is like the one that is kind of different from the others. We have a special keyword for it, delete, and then the property you want to delete. Cool, and then yeah, objects are used to represent, in our case, they're going to be used to represent the businesses and the users in our application, in our backend application. Any questions or thoughts on anything we have seen so far? That's a good question. What does the way the terminal displays the objects change? Like, you mean like here every property is in its own line and here it's in a single line? Yeah, that is just the functionality of the log function, that if it sees that it has too many properties, then it breaks them down into multiple lines. I think the limit might be 4. Yeah, or 4, or I don't know the exact number, but that's basically console log. If it says that it has too many properties to see in one line, it breaks it down for us into multiple lines. Other questions or thoughts? Okay. So functions. Functions are basically a reusable and encapsulated piece of code that we can call at will. We'll use functions to retrieve and add information to our database. So we need a basic grasp of them. So to declare a function, you basically declare them actually in the same way you would declare a variable. There's multiple ways of declaring a function in JavaScript. This is the most, this is the ES6 kind of way. variables are not intended to change, so we just use the const. And then in this case, we're going to have a function called say hi. And then we assign a function expression. This is a function expression. The parentheses is where we can list arguments, and the curly brackets denote the body of the function. Inside of the body of the function, we can have multiple statements for what our function does. So in this case, we can console log hello world. And now to invoke our function, like you probably already know, you name the function and then a set of parentheses after it will invoke that function. Run this, we have hello world then being printed onto the screen. With that, also you can see that console log is helpful because it colors things out for us. So strings are going to be color green, booleans and numbers are called yellow, and that's just nice. In this case, when we're console logging just a bare string, it just outputs that bare string. Questions or thoughts on this one? Okay. Cool. So yeah, we have the terminal. We have located the terminal, so we can skip this. This is what the anatomy of the function. Just sort of one more time, a variable declaration, a name. This is what I was meaning by camel case. The first word lowercase, second word, the first letter capital, and any subsequent words, the first letter will be capital. Then we can have a parameter, if any. Our say hi function didn't have any parameter. And then the curly brackets denote the start of the function. Inside of the function, we can have variables, or basically just any statements, and those could be variable declarations, a return statement, for loops, while loops, any of those different statements. This is a function that takes a number and returns it multiplied by 2. So some function facts: functions do work and produce a result. Functions are storing variables. Functions are declared and then invoked. Once all statements within a body of a function are done, then the function finishes returning. The return, if the function has a return statement, that's going to be the last line to be executed. In JavaScript, the return statement is actually optional. In this case, this function doesn't have a return statement, which means this function returns implicitly, and it returns a value of undefined, which is one of the values you can have. So maybe let's talk a little bit about that very briefly. So when we declare a variable, let's say let size, we don't necessarily need to give it a value. If we don't give it a value like this, we declare the variable, but we never assign a value to it. So this value is said that this variable holds a value of undefined. So if we do console.log size, and we run our program, we see undefined in a light gray. This is actually a different color, light gray, with the word undefined in it. That is indicating that that variable doesn't hold anything. So if we were to store the result of this function, which doesn't return, let's say result, say hi, and we were to console log result, we would get the same thing undefined, because say hi did not return, did return implicitly undefined. And that's one of the, this is one value, but it's also a data type. Undefined is its own data type. Whereas if we return a number, then we will get the number. If so, just to take away from here is if your JavaScript function doesn't have a return statement, it returns undefined. And that's something that at least when people are starting with JavaScript, we have to watch out for. Functions can call other functions, like in this case, actually. In this case, we can see that say hi is actually calling the log function. And I guess like this is another thing about JavaScript is that you have a bunch of global variables available for you. One such variable is console. We don't need to import it from anywhere. It's just always available in the global scope. Is one of the things that's available in the global scope, among other things. And from there, our say hi function is calling the log function of the console object, because note that here we're keying into in the same way we did user.retire. We're just keying into the log a property of the console, and then we invoke that with the parentheses. So functions can call the functions. We're going to do that. And functions may or may not return the product of their work. In that case, multiply by 2, returning that number. And when we don't have a return statement, return undefined. The return value of the function is given to the caller and can be stored in a variable. This is like what we did here, storing the value of say hi into results. And functions exist to reuse code, basically. And we're going to use functions to retrieve information from our database and print it for us. So any questions about this super quick JavaScript crash course, or any thoughts, or anything you're curious about? Good question. Semicolons have any significance? No, they don't. And sometimes I feel like so the convention in the JavaScript world is you should use semicolons, and if you use them everywhere at the end of every statement. If you're not going to use semicolons, just don't use them anyway. And you can see here that I'm inconsistent. We're just putting the semicolon sometimes. But yeah, they don't have any significance. In JavaScript, so you can skip them or add them, but don't be like me, adding sometimes and not adding some other times. Other questions or thoughts? Okay, let's move on. So the next thing we're gonna talk about is npm. So npm stands for the Node Package Manager, and is where we're gonna download some code, some open source code, for our backend. So we'll be solving, we'll download code that other developers wrote to solve common problems, and then this code we usually sometimes call it external packages, or more specifically modules, and we'll use npm to download and install them. The backend will be building tomorrow. So as we put this together, will be a package itself. We're gonna create a package so that we can keep track of our dependencies, and we can add some information about our project. And after the fact, we could, if we wanted to, upload our package or our backend to the npm public registry, and then anyone that was looking for a backend could download our code and use it in their code. There are many advantages of using npm. Some are keeping our code organized and reusing code, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel. That is like, I don't know how this works on other programming languages. Well, the closest I've been to is like in Python, you have pip, which is the Python package manager, where people can download all the packages from. I don't know, for Cash or Rook, do you guys have experience in Java? Is there any Java package manager where you could use to download open source Java packages to use in your code? Do you guys hear me? Okay, Rook is not sure. Okay, the Java development toolkit. Okay, so I think something I know about Java is that Java has a bunch of stuff built in. Most of the stuff is actually kind of built in. You don't have to download or install new stuff. But in JavaScript is very modular. Like the core language is small, and then if you want to use some other stuff, you have to download and install it, and then import it into your code, which is what we'll do here. So in our code, so in the folder you're on, and go to the terminal. Let's first check if npm is installed with npm -- version. Execute that in your terminal. It should be installed because it comes with Node, but since you're in Windows, I'm not sure if that will be different. Open libraries like Maven and Spring. Okay, it's installed for Rook. Cool. Okay, great. Okay, so then to initiate an npm package in that folder that you're on, just do npm init-y. When we do this, it turns out that I should have had my thing open here on the side. That gives us a package.json file. Make sure you locate yours on VS Code and you're able to open it. And give me confirmation on that. Yeah. So, okay, so Rick, you get the JSON, and then Charles is asking what is the -y. The -y is short for yes, and that is because, so this file that we created here is we're going to use to keep track of information about our package that we'll be building. That is going to be our server. This is going to make a little bit more sense maybe tomorrow. And if we don't do, basically, if we don't do -y, let's take a look. I can delete this. It basically just prompts me for all the information line by line. So if I do npm init, then it's prompting me here what package name do I want to give my package, and if I wanted to have it like Alejandro's package, I could type a different name. By default, it will pick the name of the folder. Then I hit enter, like what version is your package on. Default is the first version. If I want to add in description, this is a backend app. Entry point, we actually can leave this one empty. It's gonna pick user.js. This is if we're building a package, there should be an entry point file that other packages can import this one from. Test command, we're not gonna enter anything there. Git repository, keywords for the package for searchability. Author, I could put my GitHub username. License, if I want to specify that. And then if it's asking me for confirmation to make sure that everything looks okay. If it does, then I just hit enter. And that creates a package JSON with that information. So the -s is just to create that with all the defaults. Yeah. Cool. And it doesn't really matter which way you do it, as far as. So I'm gonna leave like this. So everyone got the package JSON. I think Jepson, how did it go for you? Okay, and if Jepson, do you get it?
Yeah, man.
Okay. Cool. So the package JSON, again, as I said, is going to keep track of our dependencies and information about our project. Then once we have a package JSON, that basically turns this folder into a small package. The package JSON is just going to keep track of that information. Also, yeah, this is this is a JSON file. This is a JavaScript object notation. You can see then maybe why it's called JavaScript object notation, because when we were console logging an object here, it looked just like this one. Then this is why this is called JSON. This is the JavaScript object notation. This is an exchange format that basically used everywhere, especially for applications exchanging information in like languages like Python, Java. Any programming language has a way to understand JSON and then turn that into the native data structure, whether that's a dictionary or a map in Java, etc. This just became a very handy way of applications exchanging information. And this is actually how we're going to keep exchanging information for our server as well, with the JavaScript object notation. One significant difference is in objects here, we don't have the quotes. We could actually include the quotes if we want to. But in JavaScript object notation, which is the JSON format, you will need to have the keys surrounded by quotes. Yeah. Any questions or thoughts on that? Cool. So we have npm. Now let's install our first package. So we're going to use a package called PG Promise. It's a Postgres interface for Node, which means basically it's a package that offers code and functions for us to talk to our PostgreSQL database using Node. PostgreSQL. So if we were to click on the link, this takes us to the npm page for that package, and then npm is that command, but it's also this website that we run where you can literally search for any JavaScript package, and there is hundreds, if not thousands of them. Yeah, I'm sure there's thousands of them. I'm not sure if we have reached 1 million yet. But yeah, so from here, we're going to use PG Promise. which is an interface for Postgres. Cool. So to download the PG Promise, we don't download it from the website. We will download it from in the terminal by then saying, we're going to say npm install pg-promise. That takes a little bit to install, and once it's installed, we should see that in the package JSON that we now had, we have this dependency being listed. So this is sort of saying our package, our application will depend on PG Promise to work. We also get a package log JSON. That file is for PG Promise own dependencies. It's usually a large file with PG Promise own dependencies. Okay, let me know if you didn't get any errors here or you got a similar output saying PG Promise installation went well. And also, this installs PG Promise only for this package. This doesn't install PG Promise globally or anything like that. Cool. All right, so then once we have PG Promise, then we can use it to connect to our database. So what we'll do here is we'll create a file called business.js. So in VS Code, if you're here, you can click this little icon to create a file, and then do businesses.js. So once you have that file, we can then import PG Promise, and I'm going to do that by saying const pgp equal require. Require is a global function, and then the name of the package. So it turns out that when we import PG Promise, we actually import a function that we can invoke immediately like that for our purposes. And here, sometimes you can call, actually, I don't remember what you could pass here. Let me check. You can pass options for the initialization of PG Promise, but in this case, we can just have it empty like that. So this is how we can import external code after it has been installed. Node has some built-ins that we could also import in this way without having to install because they're built in. But an example of that could be the assert module, which is used to for testing, or the HTTP module, which is used for everything HTTP, creating servers and sending it, HTTP requests, etc. So we import PG Promise. Then we basically need a database URL. This is where you need to have your database URL. So I'm gonna do empty quotes, and I'm gonna go to locate my Elephant SQL database URL. Login. Sign in with Google. I think it was this one, the one that we were trying yesterday. So then from here, you can copy your URL and then paste it in this variable. Oops. I'm gonna close my side menu for now. It's a long variable name. Not variable name, the value, I mean. And then once we have that, we can then instantiate our database connection, and we do that with db, a variable db, and then colon pgp with the database URL. And I want to call it database URL instead of just database. Cool. Let me know once you have this. Cool. Thank you. Okay. And then Jefferson, I'm not sure if you're following along. Cool. I'm gonna take that as a no. That's fine. You can watch the recording. Okay. So once we have a database, we basically from PG promise we import PGP and we invoke that with our database URL, and then here now we have a database object that we could use to talk to our database basically. So the first thing we'll do is we'll declare a variable. Let's declare this variable for get all functions. So I'm going to do const get all equal parentheses arrow. Oh yeah, sometimes these functions are sometimes called arrow functions because this looks like an arrow. It's an equal and a greater than sign. And then here we're going to say try catch. And the catch receives the error. This is a statement for things that could possibly throw an error, and we need to try and catch them if they throw an error. From here, we'll declare a variable. We can do it const businesses equal db.any, and then we can put our SQL code here. Now we know how to select everything from the businesses, which is select star from businesses. And then we close that. So to db.any, we pass the SQL string, and then we can just say return businesses. If there's an error, let's console log the error. If there's an error, and after that, let's throw it. That's it on that end. Now we're gonna write some code to then test this out. That is the main function. So when we do const main, actually main is an arbitrary name. It doesn't have to be called name. We have to use async in front of the function expression. I'll get into that in a second. Then we can say let result equal await get all, and then we invoke the function. Then we can just let's print the result. I'm gonna put a string next to it. This is just for so we can print multiple things if we pass multiple arguments to the log function. This is just for me to see in the terminal where the log starts. So I'm gonna print a string and then the result. Then we can tell Node that we're done with process.exit 0. We don't really need that last line, but tell Node not to be waiting. And then to execute this, we can just call our main function outside. Okay, so once here, then to try this code out, we can just invoke it as we would invoke any other program. Node businesses.js. Run, it takes a little bit, but then boom, we got our information from the database now in JavaScript land. You see the first business. We can see that it's from a row in the database, now it became an object in JavaScript land. And it has, for each column in the database, now we have a property and the respective value. So do this, let me know how it goes. Okay, we got success. Cash and Jefferson, let me know where you guys are.
Getting the URL right now, so I could try to get all. But I already did it in my database, so I'll just try to fill it out.
Okay. Let me know how that goes.
Yeah.
And then, Cash, how did it go for you? Yeah, so the recording will be available. What I'm told is 24 hours after the event in the Hopin page. On the Hopin page for the event. Now we'll make sure to distribute them later on Discord as well. You guys are all on Discord? In the Discord channel?
I'm on Discord.
Okay.
Also, I didn't find for some reason.
Oh.
So,
You probably are missing the return statement.
oh yeah, that's it.
Uh-huh. Oh, and I just realized that there's oh no. Oh wait, actually, you might be. Might also because I forgot to put this. This function has to be an async function as well, and I have to say await here as well. I have been that also. Actually, not sure why mine worked. In that scenario, yeah. Maybe there is some implicit. JavaScript does a lot of stuff implicitly, which is sometimes very confusing. Yeah. Okay, so talking about here, so we have a function get all that is an asynchronous function. An asynchronous function means a function that will perform some operation that is going to take some time. We don't know how long, and it could fail or succeed. And generally, asynchronous functions reach outside of the JavaScript world in some sense. In this case, we're reaching outside of the JavaScript world and into the SQL world to get something from the database. And that's why we have to say this is going to be an asynchronous function. We use async in conjunction with await. so that we basically await for this code to resolve. And once that has a result, then we keep going with the execution. This goes into a deeper topic that we're not going to touch on, called promises in JavaScript, and how asynchronous code works in JavaScript, which, as I understand, is without having experience in any other programming language with asynchronicity, it's kind of different from what you will see on some other programming languages.
Similar to threads in Java.
Yes. Yeah. So it's kind of it's a mechanism as well to to sort of run multiple things in parallel. Yeah. But it has, I think, is not as powerful. It has some limitations as compared to threads. Mm-hmm. And then the try catch is this sort of go hand in hand, because again we don't know, because we're sort of, in a way, if we think of an analogy as this code going outside of the JavaScript world and into SQL world, in a way it's like we don't know if that code is ever going to come back. We don't know if it's going to come back, and we don't know how long it's going to take for it to come back if it ever comes back. That's why we sort of wrap it in a try catch. For example, think of a way in which you could make this code crash so that we see the error and share it with us. Make this code crash and share what the error says. Okay, and what did the error show you in the terminal? Root. Relations does not exist. Cool. Yeah, that's where we can then catch those types of errors. Jepson, were you going to say something or ask a question?
Same thing that root did make the code crash, and I saw the same thing.
Gotcha. Cool. Yeah. So then that's where you could catch it. In another scenario, could be if our database is down for some reason, that will be, we will go into the catch. Cool. Any questions or thoughts about this code? Oh, Rook says, how do we get that error? Relation does not exist. That's a good question. Here, we can look at it here. Relation does not exist. So another word for relation is tables. So then if we misspell this business here on the name, and then we run again, we would get the error in the console saying error relation business does not exist. Yeah. Cool. And yeah, that could be one. If we do, expire, we remove the business from, we remove from. That should also throw an error. Syntax error at or near businesses. You may also see that one. Oh, so actually the error is being printed twice because throwing an error will automatically print it. So we can remove that from here. Throwing an error will automatically print it. Again, let's see. This case is a syntax error on the SQL side, and we get this. Also, yeah, actually, that's mainly the point. Other questions or thoughts about this? Here, moving forward. How are you feeling so far? Okay, thank you for sharing, Rook. All good. Jefferson, how you doing? Okay, let's move on. So we learn how to retrieve database. We retrieve businesses from the database, and then once they come into this, they were rows into the table. Once they come into JavaScript, they become objects that we can then manipulate. Also, I think it was Jepson who mentioned ORMs last night. So an ORM is an object relational mapper, I think is what it's called, which is, there are ORMs for PostgreSQL. Let's actually do a quick Google search. ORM JavaScript. Well, I know there's one called Next that I tried a little bit. There's Sequelize. Sequelize is an ORM. Promise-based Node.js ORM for Postgres. MySQL actually works for multiple. Solid transaction support, relations, eager and lazy loading, read replication, and more. So Sequelize is one where you could basically retrieve information from your database, but in a more, I wouldn't say in a more object-oriented way. So you could do this. You could do stuff like this. You wouldn't execute like SQL the way we're doing. That is left for Sequelize to handle. So you could create models for your data, and you could initiate your models. So in this case, like a user model, initiating it with a username and a birthday, and then you can specify what data types they are. And then you could do, to add a user to the database, you can just say user.create, and then you pass in your arguments for username and birthday, and now this will execute your insert query for you, basically. I haven't actually used ORMs myself that much. I do kind of like the raw power of SQL, and then PGPromise provides me with ways to avoid SQL injections, where, yeah, if I'm taking input from the user and I need to use that input in my queries, PGPromise provides functions to sanitize that input, so as to avoid those SQL injections. And I also like SQL and PGPromise because I get to interact more with the database, or sort of it feels a bit more hands-on. It of course has its advantages and drawbacks as well, but I can't give you sort of a full, more complete picture not having a use an ORM extensively. I know online there have been some there's some discussions in the JavaScript ecosystem about why you might not need an ORM, or why you may not want an ORM, and I've always been sort of on that side. Yeah. So yeah, just sort of know that there are other tools that exist there to talk to your database as well, and one of those is Sequelize. I think another one is called Next.js. This is a SQL query builder, but it also lets you do stuff like connect to the database in this way, similar to PGPromise. Then query. Getting a qualified instance query builder. Let's go here and see. Yeah, so you can do sort of select, and then what do you want to select? So it's kind of a mix. It's sort of a middle ground between SQLize and SQL. You're still doing sort of using kind of SQL keywords like select, where what columns you want to select, what tables, etc. Cool. Just to sort of put it on your radars. Okay. So we got our business. Now let's sort of talk a little bit more about what DB is. So as I said earlier, DB is an object that represents our database, the database we're connected to. From there, we access the db.any function that we get from PG Promise. Actually, I already talked about this. The await and the try catch, so we can jump over that. If you're interested in knowing more about asynchronous programming in JavaScript, this is a good place to go research more. Cool. So the next step is getting a business by its ID. For that, I'm just gonna copy this one, paste it here. It's gonna be very similar. Actually, let's sort of talk about it here, and then you'll type it. We have a very similar function now. It takes argument here called ID, and we have this time db.one, and then we put in our SQL query inside where we have select star from businesses where ID equal $1. And then that $1 is a parameter for our query that PG Promise is going to embed by looking up the first element in the second argument, which is a list. So the first element in that list will be then embedded here for the ID. And in that embedding process, there's sanitation taking place. So it refers to the first element in the list. So let's type this one out and then try to get a business ID. Actually, let me do it here. So get by ID. I'm adding ID here. And I'm going to name this business because we're only getting one. db.one. So db.one is when you're only getting a single thing, you can do db.one. db.any is when you can get more than one or even none. db.any is a bit more general. db.one is when you want to get exactly one row back. If a db.one, excuse me, if a db.one query returns more than one row or no rows at all, then db.one fails. It throws an error. But here the SQL query is the same, but now we have a where clause, and we say where ID equal $sign ID. Then the second argument must be an array, then denoted by the square brackets, and then ID as the element that we put inside of that array. Now to run this, to try this out, we're going to, instead of the result being get all, I'm just going to change this to get ID. And then I'm going to say ID 1. And then let's see the result. Let's see, I actually don't remember if I have that business or we deleted that business yesterday. We'll try. Let's execute it with Node, business.js. And we got Alejo Tacos, which is the business by ID 1. Cool. let me give you some time to try this one out, and let me know how it goes. And maybe you have any questions. Cool. Thank you, Rock, for the confirmation.
Ask a question real quick.
Sure.
Yeah, I see you put an arrow after in 926, right after result. Is it just to print out to look like that, or is it doing something?
So you said line 26. Oh, this one?
Yeah, is it just to look like that, like look like the arrow is pointing?
Yeah, yeah. Just to point this out here.
Oh,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not doing anything special. Cool. All right. Yeah. So now, I want you to actually an exercise. Write another function. Now you're gonna write this function. Let's call it get by name. And here you should take in a name, and then that should be able to retrieve a business by name. So that means if I put in get by ID and I put in my business name, which is Alejos Tacos, I should be able to then get the same business back. So let's do that exercise. Write a function that uses the database to get a business, but this time by name. Let me know once you have that. From the SQL, yeah, the SQL we learned yesterday. Awesome. Cool. All right. So that is selecting using JavaScript. Great. Any questions or thoughts up until this point? Okay, let's move on. That one takes, yeah, so we talked about how the value gets embedded, etc.
Hey Alejandro, Rook has a
Yep.
question there. Rook has a question in chat.
Cool, thank you. Thank you for calling it out. Can you pass the values in line 29 by terminal arguments? Oh, that's a good question. Line 29. Yeah, yes, you can. So to read terminal arguments, I think this could be fun. To read terminal arguments, we could do this. There is process.rgv argument vector at index. Actually, I think this will be at index 1, I think. So if we do this process.rgv index 1, I think that will work. Let's try it out. But I'm going to try with the ID because I didn't write the by ID. And then let's type businesses. Oops, an error. Invalid input syntax for integer. Okay, so then yeah, it is not. It's trying to take that as an integer. So I think is then index 2. I mean, if we let's just console log because we can print anything. I'm gonna print this argument vector, and we'll see everything that has it. Oh, but we can see that in this case it worked. But this is the argument vector, the first element. So this is an array. Argument vector is an array. The first element in there is the node executable where it is. And then the second argument is the second value is the file that we're executing, and the third and anything past the third will be arguments passed through the terminal. So here now we made it so that it's taking in that 10 from the terminal and plugging it in there. So yeah, you can pass values from the terminal using the argument vector. Cool. All right, let me bring that back. Other questions or thoughts? All right, so we did that. Let's now look at adding businesses. So adding businesses has more lines of code, but is the SQL code you're familiar with already? We basically have now because the SQL query is longer, I decided to store the SQL string in its own variable called SQL. The variable name doesn't matter. And then I break down the insert into multiple lines. So here we're inserting into businesses. We're inserting name, phone, address, description, etc. For the values, we just use those same arguments or the sort of the position of in the list that pgprom is going to use to embed the actual values. So the first element in the list will be for name, second element for phone, etc. Now this is our array, this is our list, and then the first thing that we put in there is the name. That's going to be $1, phone $2, etc. One thing here is that we're adding we are passing here an entire object. So let me give you some time to type this one out. So I'm actually going to type it as well. Add the synchronous function. And then new business object. I'm going to do try catch. So here's where we have the backticks. So backticks is, maybe I don't know how often you use this character respectively, but is the key below the escape. And those works as a string, but it's a cool string that can have new lines inside, which is really handy for readability. So here we're going to insert into businesses. And we're going to insert name, phone, address, description, picture URL, active, open. So this is going to be longer term. Make it down a bit more. Oh. Into businesses, open date, admin, user ID, average rating, and so we're going to insert that, and then the values that we want to insert is values, parentheses, $1. I'm just going to copy this. Here, replace the values. 2, 3. Actually, it's a them as well. Cool. Once we have the SQL query, we're going to just to execute it. We then just say await. Do that one because we only want one results back. Oh, actually here. So this is something that Cash showed us last night. We're going to be using the returning keyword with the returning star, so that it returns immediately what gets inserted. And then here, the second argument for our query must be that list that then I'm not going to type, I'm just going to copy it from here. But then this basically means, if I close the terminal, fill out all that information from the businesses. So the first element is going to be the name property of the new business. That's going to come in the arguments, and so on. And lastly, here we can return businesses. And then let's throw the error. Cool. Okay, I think I see Cash got it done. Rook, where are you on with this one? Cool. All right, now to run this, you can just call here add. Now here we need to pass an object that must have all that information. So I think I have that down below here. So in this case, I'm going to insert this object to our database using a copy right here. Oh, I guess we could have the object in its own variable and just say let add that business. We could also pass it here straight like that. So copy this object or create your own with these properties, and then run that in your terminal. Let me know once you got that done. We just need to invoke our function and passing the object representing our business. Cool. So Zcash got it. What was the ID that you got back, Cash? Cool. And then Rook, how did it go for you? Okay, that's all right. Give it some time. Let us know once you execute it. Yeah, show one more one soon. That's interesting. Again, duplicate key value violates unique constraint. So the reason for that is in our database yesterday, we said that basically you're using a duplicate name because in our database yesterday, we said that the name of the business had to be unique. We had a constraint, I think. Oh, actually, wait, hold on. No, did we? I don't think we did. I don't think we had that constraint yesterday. Did you? Maybe are you trying to add an ID here on in this object? That might be the only one that I can think of. Yeah, cool. Okay, so yeah, because the ID, the reason for that is because the ID is in our database yesterday. We set the ID to be. Let's see if I can connect. So actually, I need the password. So in our database yesterday, we said that. Where would that one be? Yeah, we said that our businesses will have. Yeah, there we go. Serial, and then that is automatically incremented. So we should not provide it in an insert query. Cool. All right. So let's take a look. So this was select insert. Let's take a look at updating and then deleting. So for updating, we're gonna create a function called update. It's gonna be sort of have the same signature. Async. It's gonna take an ID because we need to identify what business we want to update, and then we have the same structure. We have a try, a catch. Where did it go? We have a try and a catch, and then we have let's say let updated business equal db at 1. We want to receive one row back, and then actually here we're gonna do set const this SQL equal backticks, and then we're gonna write an update SQL statement. So we can do update update businesses set. No, we can say from another complete functionality. Business set, and we can say set the name to be equal to $1, comma, and then I'm going to say 9 of those. I'm going to do phone, address, description. What else? Picture URL. And active. Admin user ID. We want to change the admin of the business, and then average rating. This is going to be bullet point 2, bullet point 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh wait, so I'm missing one. active open date. I guess it doesn't have to be set in the same order. So I can specify open date here equal to $sign now. Okay, and then we want to say where ID is equal to $10. So once we have that SQL for the update, we can pass it out to our function. Then we need a list. We need an array to specify what is $1 going to be. So I completely forgot. We're going to need, for the updating, we're going to need an ID. And also we're going to take an updates object, updates. So we're going to, the values for the updates we're going to get from there. So we're going to say, and the first element is going to be updates.name. I'm just going to copy this. The second one is going to be phone number. The third one we said address. The fourth one we said was description. Then picture URL. And active. Let's keep going. Admin user ID is the next one, and then average rating. And lastly, open date. So we have that, and then the $10 is going to be the ID. So we need to put ID as our 10th element here. Once we have that, we can simply do the same structure. Oh, I also forgot our returning star to return everything from the update, because again, by default, insert updates or deletes do not return anything, but it's sometimes helpful to see what we just updated. So here we're going to say const, let's call it, actually we already have it here. Missing an await here. We can just then return updated business. If there's an error, let's throw the error. And finally, we can just, in our test, try out this function. So I'm going to, here, this is like an update that we could do instead of adding a full update. And my business, actually, I'm gonna take this out into its own. Call this that updates equal that. And so object is going to be our object. And in this case, let's say I want to update. I want to update my business ID, which has my name, Alejos Tacos, and I want to update it to be with the AMC information, so with these updates. And we get this. So I'm going to remove this arrow from there. Let's just do result. If we put this correctly, then this is going to update business with ID 1. That's this ID here with using the information from this object to plug it into our SQL code. Updates. Oh, that is in. We have to put it here. Cool. Then let's run this one. Open up the terminal. The code now doesn't fit in the whole screen. Terminal out. Node.js. Oh, we got an error. see what it says. Relation business does not exist. What was the solution for that? What was the issue with that? This was the same issue I think that Brooke had earlier. What was the problem here?
Is it a typo?
All right, where is the typo? Yes. Okay. So the spot.
In the line 59 instead of line 59, no? No, I'm not there.
Line 60, yeah. Here's because we don't have a this where I have highlighted, it should be the table name, and there is no table name called business. The table name is called businesses. So save that, we run this again. Now this change for this changed the information from business ID 1, which before it was my Alejos Tacos business. Now it updated it with AMC and Pipe 25. Cool. Diruk has the ID. Oh, yeah. Take a look at it here. Here. And then as Kash is saying, yeah, we'll use the ID in our. Let me lower the font size a little bit. Yeah. The ID, we have it here. So the ID is going to be the 10th element in our array. 10th element is our ID, which is up in our arguments here. Okay, questions or thoughts about this one? Looks good. Any confirmation from Rook or Jepson?
I'm just following from now because I'm still a little bit behind. So I'm just following you and watching from now.
Gotcha. All right, so that is the update. Now we're able to update a business using JavaScript code. The last one here that we'll do is delete. Actually, let you try to figure out delete on your own. Try to figure out how to delete that business. Let me give you 7 minutes for that. Oh, we're already over time. Let's do 7 minutes. Try to figure out delete is at the bottom of the README, but try to figure it out on your own, because I hope you picked up the pattern by now. And I'll be right back. Okay, I see Rocky's done. Cash, how's it going for you? Okay. Any questions on the delete or anything else? Okay. Let's see what else do I have here. I think that's mostly it. Updating a business. Oh, here's a challenge that I want to give you. On the updating a business. So this is that's pretty much it for the day. Update and delete were the last remaining. One challenge that I would like you to tackle is, so updating at the moment only lets you update the entire thing at the same time. We cannot do like partial updates. So I would like you to try to figure out how to do partial updates. Hope that was the timer. Partial update. So maybe if you have time today or tomorrow, try to see how would you do a partial update. Oh, Cash said he had a partial update. So, but does that mean so you didn't list all these columns here, right? Okay. Flip it to go. Okay, so you listed 3, right? But what if we don't know how many the user would like to update, right? How could we do that? What if the number of columns we want to update is variable? So there is okay, let me give you some hints and you will still have to execute them. One is you could have, well, one option is you could have a function for each update. So one called update name, another called update phone, another called update address, and so on. And that way you could update one at a time. Another way, what you could do is, let's say we only wanted to update. Okay, so yeah, patch. So Jobson is asking if patch would work. Patch is, we'll talk about patch tomorrow. Patch is on the server or the API side. Databases don't know anything about patch. But basically, what if we wanted to do something like this? We wanted to, and we didn't even know what properties we want to update. Let's say something like this, where we wanted to update business to and only apply these updates. The address should change, the picture URL should change, the open date should change, the name should change, but not everything else. So the one way is will require. I realized that I think so. I listed here about how to like have this SQL query string be built sort of dynamically. And I linked to an example here, but I was thinking about that example. The example is kind of overboard. It doesn't need to be that complicated. One option, and so I guess I'm telling you the answer, but you still need to write it. You'll still need to implement it. Because you get here the ID of the business and the updates, right? What you could do is have a string where you keep the beginning of the query. That is, let's say const SQL equal update businesses. Have this, and then what you could do is you could have a set of if statements and check if the name is present in here in the update, so if the name property is present in the updates object, let's add set name $1. And then another if statement, if the address is present, then let's add to our string the set address equal $2, and so on and so forth. So you will need a set of if statements, which we didn't see here, but those are pretty much the same on all programming languages. And you can just Google if statements on JavaScript. You will need to figure out how do you check if a property is present in an object. Though I'm not going to give you that piece of information. But any questions or thoughts? Oh, and another sort of exercise, do the same for the users. So create a users.js file, and then do the same for the table users. Be able to add a user, update a user, remove a user, and get a user by ID. Also get all users. Any questions or thoughts? Does that sound good? Too complicated? Feedback, thoughts?
All right. You're asking for feedback for today, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's pretty cool because, like I said, I never really seen it like written out a whole CRUD. Usually we just use the ORM, so it's kind of cool to see what's going on in the background.
Cool. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and that brings me to, yeah, the ORM still has to do this under the hood, which is take your fancy function calls and turn them into a SQL string that then gets sent to the database server. Cool. All right. So I'll let you with that. And yeah, but thank you for coming. Tomorrow we'll put this on a REST API so that people in the internet could access it through an HTTP request. And that will be, yeah, a CRUD API for a server that could be the beginning of Yelp or the Yellow Pages type of application.
Quick question: are you gonna this is gonna update into the GitHub? Are you gonna
Yeah, I'll upload this into GitHub in a bit.
and it's in the bootcamp, backend development bootcamp, right?
Yeah, I can.
Another one I could just clone that because I think I cloned the backend development bootcamp.
Yeah, that's one.
Cool. Yeah.
Cool. Any final thoughts or question, Cash, Rook? Okay, well, this is it for today. Thank you for coming. I'll see you tomorrow. Also, Jepson, do you want to stay to look at your stuff?
Yeah, I mean,
the database that you're
behind though. I don't know if I don't want to take too much of your time.
I have like 10 minutes. I think we can get it in 10 minutes.
Yeah, I'm just gonna try to connect the database and then I can't share anything.
Let's do this. Let's go on Discord and then you can share your screen there.
All right, no problem.
Cool. All right. Thank you too. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.